Please come in. You're right on time. The door only opens when the clock strikes midnight. Georgia and Hannah are preparing to broadcast from the belfry. Just like this old bell tower, they have many stories to tell. Some old and some new. Follow me up these stairs, but mind your step. Ah, they're waiting for you.
It reminds me of the skull alien thing in Scooby-Doo.
The
You know what I'm talking about?
skull alien thing in Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, like in the original series, it's like a
Hmm.
spacesuit with like the dome on top, but it's just like a floating green skull,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like I
Yeah.
can't do it. Yeah,
I don't know. But I do know what you're talking about. Yeah, hell yeah. Scooby-Dooby-Doo,
that's what we
where
did
are
yesterday
you?
morning. Shannon actually made me breakfast in bed,
Hmm.
and we watched original Scooby-Doo episodes and pretended it was like Saturday morning cartoons.
Hell yeah.
mm, Forgot to fill up my water. Oh well.
Oops.
I'm
What are you doing?
actually really glad we talked previously about our pirate D&D stuff last weekend because we're gonna actually talk a little bit about Hafgufa today,
Hafgufa.
which is
The fuck is Hafgufa?
well, that's Shannon's character's name, if you remember.
Oh. Well, I just remember him being Haffy.
Yeah, his full name is Hafgufa.
Hafgufa. Yes.
Um, which is actually a real thing. So in our campaign, Shannon's character is like a homebrew whale folk. So he's got like a humanoid body, but the he has a whale head. Uh, I think he was a little inspired by King Shark, and yeah, he's a big stinky whale guy, and his name's
Is he
Hafgufa.
stinky?
Yeah, he said that he stinks.
Okay.
His
I
name's
think I just
Hafgufa,
didn't remember that.
but we refer to him as Haffy.
And he wrecks shit in
He,
like a good way.
yeah, he's a ranger.
Hmm.
A 13th century Icelandic saga, you know I love a good Icelandic saga,
Oh yeah.
describes a creature that had never been caught, a beast so large sailors mistook it for land, an enormous being which devoured fish, men, and even ships whole. And they refer to this being as Hafgufa. So half meaning sea and gufa meaning steam or vapor in Old Norse.
Hmm.
Some described it as a giant crab, others described it as a squid. Over time, this evolved into what we now know as the Kraken, which also has elements of something called an island whale mixed in there. Uh,
Literally just island whale.
Island whale.
Okay. Very creative.
Kraken, in etymology, both modern Norwegian and Swedish refers to an unhealthy animal or something twisted, originating in Old Norse, like a twisted, crooked tree branch, for example.
Yeah.
Crake. In German, Kraken apparently just means octopus, but can also refer to the Kraken. And then I guess it's also an old Norwegian word for octopus, but it's also an old Swedish euphemism for a whale, which became taboo because they thought that saying the word could summon the creature.
Like saying Kraken or
Yeah,
the Kraken, whatever.
yeah.
Oh,
Which I think, isn't there some kind of nod to that in Pirates of the Caribbean?
I you're asking the wrong person.
Yeah, I know.
We'll find
Well,
out this
we'll
Saturday,
find
don't
out
worry.
next weekend, yeah. When we have our Pirate Day, Pirates of the Caribbean Marathon, and we're all dressing up, so stay tuned for pictures of that too.
Hell yeah.
The Kraken is first found in texts by Carl Linnaeus in 1735 in his Systema Naturae.
Really?
Yeah.
Carolus Linnaeus?
Carolus
My dude?
Linnaeus. Yeah.
Sorry, my
Oh my
dog?
God.
Oh, I love Carl
The,
Linnaeus.
so that was 1735, but stories of the Kraken obviously go back earlier, maybe to the 12th century. In the 18th century, we, of course, have this growth of scientific disciplines, as we've discussed many times now. And though we don't quite have biologists yet, we do have natural philosophers, right? And most of them dismiss the Kraken as just a fisherman's tale until 1755, when we get the most detailed description from this Danish guy, Eric Pontoppidan, Pontoppidon, Pontoppidan,
Nice.
Pontoppidan. He's a bishop and a natural philosopher, and he wrote The Natural History of Norway in 1755. And he documents several fishermen who unanimously and consistently state that if you row out several miles from the Norwegian coast, you are in danger of becoming a victim of the Kraken, and describes it as round, flat, and full of branches, and the largest and most surprising of all animal creation. Initial signs include catching an unusually large amount of fish as they try to escape the Kraken, that it looks like a number of small islands. Several horns appear, which grow thicker and thicker the higher they rise above the surface of the water, and sometimes they stand up as high as masts of middle-sized vessels, the horns referring to arms or tentacles. And if you are lucky enough to survive a Kraken attack and you now found yourself drifting in sea and clutching a piece of wood that used to be part of your boat, don't worry, because the chances that its whirlpool will finish you off. It leaves behind a whirlpool. So to dive deeper into these things, the number of small islands was apparently also a trait of another sea monster, the island whale, as I mentioned, which was so big that sailors would mistake it for land, anchor to it, set a fire on its back, and at this point the whale is like, what the fuck? And then dives back under the water and drags them all to their death.
What are you gonna do, right?
And to go back to Hafgufa, which are now believed to have been whales seen trap feeding, so they wait upright at the surface of the water with just their mouth open at the surface. And they vomit up this regurgitate chum substance, which stinks. And that was another, the smell was this other kind of giveaway of the sea monster. And then that acts as bait, which lures the other fish to come feed, and then it eats all those fish that are attracted by its regurgitated chum. And that's called trap feeding.
Oh, I have heard of trap feeding before. I did not realize that that's what that was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the smell is described as rotten cabbage, by the way.
I don't know what rotten cabbage smells like.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah. Rotten any food is.
Yeah.
That's not good.
So that whale characteristic has now been attributed to what the Hafgufa sea monster was. And then there's also, we'll talk more about later, but the whirlpool phenomenon left behind is its own kind of sea monster in Greek mythology.
The whirlpool itself.
The whirlpool itself, yeah.
Oh.
So we'll come back to that in a minute.
Natural phenomena kind of monster.
Yeah. So Pontoppidan wrote that the Kraken is actually content eating fish, and that it has a strong and peculiar scent, which it can emanate at certain times, and by means of which it beguiles and draws other fish to come in heaps about it. And he describes that the Kraken basically uses its own poo to lure other fish, writing that it colors the surface of the water, and that the muddiness is so very agreeable to the smell or taste of other fish, or to both, that they gather together from all parts. And it's the poo that makes the fish swim above the Kraken all the time. So I think this is also depicted in parts of the Caribbean. There's a big swarm of fish that swims above the Kraken. And then he can eat the fish whenever he wants and make more poo to attract more fish, which also sounds like trap feeding.
Mhm.
The smell and like the discoloring the water. I assume it has, regurgitated chum from a whale gut, probably has its own color.
I hate that.
Um,
Sounds so gross.
but that's also the reason that many people think that Norwegian sailors were having encounters with giant squid as well, just like the ink.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, it's probably worth mentioning that we've all seen the screenshots of whale penises explaining the origins of sea monsters. So, a humpback whale is one of the whales in this area that's commonly associated with trap feeding. So I looked it up. A humpback whale's penis can be up to 10 feet long.
I love how you were like, I assume that we've all seen whale penises.
Well, there was that screenshot about,
Yeah.
was it like a Tumblr post or something about,
And it's like, is this Nessie? And it's like, that's a whale penis, actually.
yeah.
That
Well,
one?
there's like the one very common one about like natural philosophers seeing whale penises and not knowing what they were and being like, that's a sea
Oh,
monster.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and then there's just a picture of the dick
Certainly
out of the water.
was.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, it still seems like a sea monster, but
Yes.
so if it's 10 feet long, like just imagine how girthy it is, because it's proportionate, so
Right?
boy howdy. Anyway.
Anyway.
Oh, Dorcas whale's penis. So freshman year. Freshman year biology. A Dorcas whale's penis. Anyway,
Sorry.
so giant squid
Mm-hmm.
are recorded as being able to grow up to 43 feet long, which is equivalent to 4 stories.
I was just gonna ask how many, like how tall building wise
Yeah.
is that? That's freaking large, dude.
Yeah. And to recap what giant squid look like real quick, in case you don't know, they're huge.
Like a
They,
squid, but giant.
yeah, they have their head also looks like a penis.
Yep.
It's called a mantle. Their eyes are fucking giant. They have all these arms flailing everywhere, and some of them have suckers with serrated teeth on them.
Mhm.
They only have 2 tentacles, by the way.
Oh, I think I did know that.
They have 2 tentacles and then
Yeah.
a bunch of arms.
Yeah.
So, like, just describing that seems ridiculous. Imagine seeing that and not knowing anything about marine biology or like what deep sea creatures look like, and you're an 18th century man just trying to do some fishing on a ship and you see that. I'd shit my pants. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. You're like outside at night, just, you're like hanging out over the railing. You've got a lantern next to you and you see some movement in the
Leonardo
water.
DiCaprio is
And you
holding
look
your
down
waist.
and there's a giant eye. Like, can you imagine?
Like,
Oh, God.
even knowing what a giant squid is, half of us would still probably shit our pants
Yes.
seeing that.
Absolutely. Oh.
There's also a theory that sea monsters can be based on real creatures like giant squid, but they're also like twisted to embody the fear of the sea because even though sailors might spend their whole lives at sea, they don't love it like it's often romanticized in, media. It's cold, there's scurvy, which can give you hallucinations. You have no modern navigation equipment, so you can get lost easily. The sea itself is unpredictable, the currents and the tides and the weather. One bad storm and you're dead.
It's lonely.
Yeah. And like, I love the sea. I grew up on the sea, but
Yeah.
I don't
But-
want to be on a boat that much.
Yeah, like working at sea is
Yeah.
different.
Like-
Because, like
My
any
whole-
job sucks, but then,
My whole town is full of monuments to fishermen who didn't make it home. Like,
you're acutely aware that
Yeah.
it's not great.
it's suspected that what Papadon recorded as poo, like I said, could very well be ink. which is a self-defense tactic of cephalopods,
Mhm.
or this trap feeding as well. I think that trap feeding is more of a recent theory because it's only actually been like documented by scientists really recently,
Mhm.
like within the last 20 years tops. But honestly, if I could squirt ink at someone who was disturbing me or annoying me, I'd do it.
Right?
So, like I said, they only have two tentacles with suckers, and all the other dangly bits are arms, but they don't have the suckers and they're not as long. So, there you go. The long ones are the tentacles. Some cephalopods can also eject mucus along with ink, and that becomes like a false body. Like they can create their own decoy
Ooh.
to distract predators. Isn't that crazy?
I just had like a weird like tummy turn moment just thinking about that. Oh, sorry.
They're called pseudomorphs.
God.
If I could do that, I also would do that. If I could just eject a body double of myself to distract someone long enough for me to leave,
Made of
I'd do that.
mucus?
Yeah. Jelly?
Jelly? What flavor jelly?
A jelly Georgia?
Oh my god, hold on.
All women should have this self-defense mechanism. Like, there's a
Oh my
man
god.
like hitting on you at the club or, the grocery store or wherever the fuck you are anymore, because men do it all over. And you just
Jelly Georgia.
eject a jelly version of yourself, and they're hitting on that. Well, you just leave, and then it just like collapses, and they're like, "Oh fuck, not again."
Mine would be like Humor's Hannah or something. Like that's the goo. It's the humus.
It's all the bile that you don't produce anymore for not having a
No,
gallbladder.
literally. Oh my god. Wait.
Anyway.
Holy shit, Jelly Georgia. Writing that down 1 second. Jelly Georgia, Christ.
Apparently, it's not unusual to find whales with circular scars around their mouths where they try to eat a giant squid and they like freaked out.
Yeah, they get
And
defensive wounds.
Yeah.
The circular sucker stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whales get scars from like the like the claws that they have as well, the serrated teeth on the suckers, and then and they have beaks as well, right? So
yeah, squids have beaks.
Disgusting. One of the things Shannon was talking about maybe making, not for the convention, but was like a Kraken beak. Ugh.
That would be lit. That would be something cool to display.
Yeah. And if you thought giant squid were enough, let me tell you about colossal squid.
There's more? Wait, tell them about Jelly Georgia.
I don't know how to do it justice. I just said that, you know how squid can produce like mucus decoys of themselves?
Yeah.
I just said I wish that I could produce a Jelly Georgia to distract people. Ew, go away. That was me, I collapsed into jelly.
Jelly Georgia.
Are you pooping? What's happening?
I'm trying to make a gelatinous copy of myself. It's not working.
You're just gonna shit your pants and that's it.
We need to think of an alliteration.
Like
if I'm Humor's Hannah, what's Shannon?
Jelly Georgia, humor's Hannah. Shit. It's shit.
Oh my
I was gonna
god.
say sweaty.
Sweaty Shannon.
That does sound better.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Should
Hannah.
do it. Hi.
Seeing a little bit for D&D.
Hell yeah.
Hail.
Seth and I's we do the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs kiss. But I'm hoping you've seen that and you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise,
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, cool.
Okay, anyway, colossal squid.
Colossal squid, there's more.
There's more. But wait, there's more.
God.
So they also have the suckers. I guess it's colossal squid that have the hooks. Sorry. They don't have teeth on their suckers. I did it again with the vowels. They don't have teeth on their suckers, but they do have swiveling hooks.
Swiveling hooks. I'm gonna need to see a picture of this, I think.
Okay. While you look that up, let me tell you that only 8 known colossal squid have ever been recorded, and 6 of those were just from beaks that had been found in whales. So only 2 actual colossal squid have been seen.
Okay, I don't like it.
Isn't that
I
terrifying?
looked up a picture and I hate it. Oh, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, please continue.
So
I'm strong.
that's all I got on colossal squid. They have found evidence of 8 colossal squid being alive, and 6 of them are beaks stuck in whales.
Oh, like it got ripped off and like landed in the whale.
I don't know. It didn't really explicitly say like I don't know if it was eaten by the whale or if it was like embedded in the
Yeah.
whale.
Okay.
So anyway, back to Greek mythology.
Yeah.
We can talk about the Odyssey. Do you remember the story of the Odyssey?
I mean, there's a lot to it, so
Would you like me to provide a summary?
sure.
Well,
I'm
for the
sure it'll come back to me as
for the listeners too. Yeah. So the Trojan War happens for 10 years. That's the Iliad, right? Well, the end of it's the Iliad. Also, it was Odysseus's idea to do the horse, the Trojan horse, by the way. So the war is over, and Odysseus and his soldiers all start heading back to Greece. Poseidon is already pissed off with Odysseus because they're Greek gods, they're always pissed off at someone. So Poseidon is trying to make the return voyage as hard as possible. They get stuck on an island, but there's a giant on the island eating 1 crew member a day. Which, if you're a giant and you're only eating 1 person a day, I feel like that's showing some restraint, right? That's like rationing. The giant, of course, is Polyphemus, or Polyphemus, the Cyclops. Odysseus ends up tricking him and stabbing him in the eye. They escape. Turns out Polyphemus is one of Poseidon's sons, so now he's even more pissed. Then they get to this next island where they meet Circe, who is a sorceress or a witch. She turns all of his crew into pigs because she wants him to stay. Eventually they leave. He goes to the underworld for directions from his dead friends.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, you know, it's mythology because a man would never stop for directions.
Hell no.
Especially if they had to put in that kind of effort.
Yes. Let's stop in the underworld.
Yeah. So then they encounter some sirens, and then they pass through the Strait of Messina, which is where the boot part of Italy is kicking Sicily.
Mm-hmm.
Then they eat a sacred cow. My autocorrect changed it to a scared cow.
That happens to me so much. Like it goes the either way too. It's like, bruh, you don't even know what I'm trying to say right now. God.
So they're punished for this massive storm that kills the whole crew, but Odysseus survives and makes it to another island where he is made a sex slave by Calypso for 7 years. Finally, he escapes. He gets home. I think it's been like 20 years at this point. And the whole time, his wife Penelope is being harassed by men who think they're entitled to what she has because they're men. And actually wrote a paper about what a badass Penelope is for one of my...
Hell yeah. I like Penelope.
Yeah, I do too. My comparative lit classes. So anyway, he gets home eventually, and he has to like prove himself as being Odysseus, which he does. I think it's like an archery contest or something. I can't remember. Anyway, as Odysseus is leaving Circe to once again try and get home, she tells him he's going to go through the Strait of Messina, and she's like, "Good luck, but you're kind of boned because either way." Like, there's this sea monster, but if you try and avoid this sea monster, you're going to run into this other sea monster.
Mm-hmm.
And she's talking about Scylla and Charybdis, who live on either side of the strait.
Yeah.
So Scylla is on the Italian side, and apparently she started off as a naiad or a nymph, and there are several variations of that story that all involve her being beautiful and someone being in love with her and someone else being jealous and turning her into a hideous monster, which is like all of Greek mythology. She lives up in a cave on the side of the strait, fishing for whatever large things she can catch, like dolphins or sharks, but she's also not opposed to dumb sailors if they happen upon her. In art,
Of which I'm sure there are many.
yeah. In art, she's depicted as having a long tail, and then she has a bunch of dogs coming at her waist, where like the fishtail part meets her human waist.
Mm-hmm.
Though I read that some people also describe her as having tentacles. So she's described in the Odyssey as being kind of serpentine-ish and having 12 dangling feet and 6 heads, which each snatch up a crew member as Odysseus's ship passes through the strait, under the advice of Circe, who says they should steer closer to Scylla through the strait than Charybdis, because Charybdis is on the Sicilian side, and she is basically a giant whirlpool waiting to devour ships whole as they go through the strait. But she was also thought to begin life as maybe a minor deity or a half-deity who helped flood the area with water, and Zeus is pissed, so he cursed her, as is also the case in all of Greek mythology.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like that's really common. Like, Zeus gets ticked off, and then everybody suffers.
Yeah. So, cursed women made into monsters.
Yeah.
By Zeus.
Yeah.
What's new?
It's okay. It's either he gets ticked off or he gets horny, or both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or he was horny and then got ticked off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are like the two main sea monsters in Greek mythology. Actually, I like the Odyssey. No, I like the Iliad better than the Odyssey, honestly.
Me too.
There's just more stuff in the Odyssey. Like the Odyssey is about more.
There's a lot more going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's a longer period of time. The Iliad is just like Achilles being jelly and throwing a tantrum and getting killed for it. Whereas the Odyssey is like a 20-year journey. Yeah. There's a lot of Kraken things in pop culture. Most recently, the Seattle NHL team.
Yeah.
There are tons of appearances of the Kraken in Marvel. Also, we were talking about Sword and Sorcery a couple episodes ago. Conan shows up in Marvel every once in a while.
Yes.
Which is fun. Alfred Lord Tennyson published a sonnet called The Kraken, and some scholars believe that Lovecraft was inspired by that sonnet when he was writing Call of Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kraken is referenced in Moby Dick and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. There are stats for Kraken being a boss in D&D. Kraken are referenced in Artemis Fowl in kind of a cool way. They're peaceful and double as islands, but they shed their shells explosively by igniting a layer of methane between the new shell and the old shell, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's insane.
Right?
I'm sorry.
In Game of Thrones, the Kraken is one of the best sigils of the House Greyjoy. And it's also said that the War of the Five Kings causes the Kraken to stir because they are drawn by blood in the water. And if anyone cares, the Greyjoy sigil is tied for my favorite Game of Thrones sigil with House Bolton's Flayed Man. I think we've talked about that before. I think I have a splinter in my ankle.
Damn, that sucks.
Anyway, in Umbrella Academy, number 2, Diego is also known as the Kraken because he has the ability to hold his breath indefinitely, which is something in the graphic novel, but they omitted that from the show for whatever reason. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, which we'll be watching next weekend. The Kraken attacks the ships of men who bear the black spot. And I think it shows up as being dead in the third movie. I can't remember, though. It's been a while since I watched that one. In Clash of the Titans, the 2010 one, which was apparently terrible, the Kraken was used as a weapon of the gods, and then this version was later referenced in the Lego Batman movie.
That's funny.
And finally, this fun fact, in 1990, a set of 4 postage stamps was released featuring legendary Canadian creatures, and one of them was the Kraken.
Oh.
I didn't know that the Kraken was claimed as a Canadian creature, but what do I know?
I mean, the Northern Islands, I guess. It's a lot of ocean up there.
Yeah. The moral of the story is that the sea is full of terrifying creatures, whether they are mythological or actually real. colossal squid and whale dicks, and
Yep.
that's what I got.
I generally tend not to think about the ocean on purpose. I don't know if I necessarily have thalassophobia, but I have whatever's verging on that.
It's that it's kind of like that fear of the unknown, and like how deep sea is kind of a lot like outer space, but somehow worse because it's like here on Earth,
Yeah, it's more present.
and
It's
things
easier to access.
yeah, and things on Earth should be familiar, but there's just so many parts of the sea that are unexplored, and
There's
just
also the fact that if you try to get in it without like the proper equipment, you will drown. Like,
uh-huh, yeah,
so you don't, most people don't get to know what's under there because, without just
yeah,
reading about it, you're never
and
going to experience it.
I'm sure the whole Ocean Gate debacle really
Listen,
like put a new fear in a lot of people who kind of thought maybe they wanted to do some exploring in the ocean. They were that happened. They were like, never mind, let's fuck it.
that vessel was not properly engineered, okay?
I told you that Josh Gates was supposed to be on that, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
But yeah,
And
my
wasn't he like, yeah, I'm not,
he something
or he
came up
like
at the
I thought it was like he knew something about the company, or maybe that was just a conspiracy theory that I read.
no, I think something just came up at the last minute, and he had to like go shoot, or something else came up, and
Instead, some
um
other billionaires died,
yeah,
or millionaires,
it
whatever it
was
was.
the Robin Hood guy who
Mm.
told me about that when I was in England. The one that was on Expedition Unknown.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
I just, yeah, I don't really have any. I mean, it's sad when people die, but I don't really have any sympathy because that was fucking stupid.
It's pretty fucking stupid, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, hold on. They're sending another sub, but I don't know if it's already happened or it's going to. Oh, no, no, excuse me. It's been commissioned. Another submarine's been commissioned. So, um, Ohio billionaire Larry Connor.
No idea who that is.
No, no idea. I have no idea who that is. And he says that he's going to commission directly from Triton submarines.
Oh, like people who actually know how to make ocean craft instead of
Yeah. Larry Connor, American real estate and technology business person,
gross.
as well as a private astronaut certified by NASA. He is the head of Connor Group, a real estate investment firm located in Dayton. All right. So he's one of those assholes that's probably buying up a ton of housing. Although during COVID, he donated $1.6 million in bonuses to his workers under the Connor Group. He gave up his salary. He fully funded childcare expenses and expanded the company-sponsored loan program with zero interest. That's
Huh.
actually not that bad.
I mean, as far as billionaires go, I mean, if he's still a billionaire, there's room for improvement. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
he's doing more than a lot of people.
he doesn't really invest in what seems like philanthropy.
Hmm.
He seems to participate or fund like sport things or diving or whatever.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't think I have thalassophobia, but oh my gosh, when I was working on St. John, there were a couple boat trips that we had to take because they were running out of volunteers to run tour groups. So they asked Alessia and I to volunteer for some, and there was this one called the Reef Bay Hike, I think, or
Hmm.
Reef Hike Trail. I don't remember what it was called, but it was Reef something. And along the way, like near-ish the top, we saw these petroglyphs, and they wanted us to do it because we're archaeologists and know what the hell we're talking about. And then at the end, we hop on a boat because it takes you, like, you take the island, it basically goes from this point and you go all the way to the other side of the island.
Yeah.
So you have to get on a boat to go back from whence you came. So
From whence you came.
I went on several boat rides, and there were a couple times where it started raining in the middle of it, and it never actually like rains or storms unless it's hurricane season. It sprinkles during the day, but that's because like the temperature gets so hot that then clouds form. Anyway,
Yeah, humidity.
Yeah, humidity, just like it does in like Gulf Coast.
Florida, yeah.
Yeah. And every single time I was so scared. I was so scared. I was like, I'm going to die. I would always sit in the middle of the boat with my arm around one of the poles that was like, holding up and I would always just be like this. And I would just sit there and I wouldn't even play on my phone. I'd be like, just staring into nothing, like at the ground, like at my feet, whatever. And I'd be so scared. There was this other one where my boss, Ken, ran a tour. It was a pirates tour.
Hell yeah.
But he also shoved in some information about the Taino because he always did that because no one ever wants to learn about the indigenous people that lived on the island previously. They only want to hear about the pirates that visited there, or like Christopher Columbus or whatever. That one was actually fine because there were a ton of people on board and we were going really slow. Yeah. Then there was the ferry that went over to St. Thomas, which is the bigger island, and it's where the cruise ships go, and it's where the airport is, and like all that stuff. Like there are resorts on St. John, but it's mostly a national park.
Yeah.
The ferry was fine. That was just like taking a ferry on a river, you know what I mean? Even though it was just steep.
Yeah.
Like everywhere else.
I don't know. Being on boats doesn't bother me. I don't think. I mean, I've been on a lot of boats and I've never had a bad experience on them, so
yeah.
I'm sure if I did have a bad experience, maybe my opinion would change, but like I said, I grew up in the sea. The thing that we went to England for in June to walk out to the lighthouse, like that whole thing raised money for the lifeboat station in our hometown, and I don't know, like the lifeboats and like the fishermen memorials and like boats coming in and out, like that was just the way of life in the town. So
yeah,
it's like one of those things where you are always hyper aware that the sea is dangerous, but like you just have to be smart about it, and especially if you're on land, just to enjoy the tide or whatever. Like as long as you're smart about it, you're fine. Obviously, that doesn't really apply to people working out there. Like we have friends that work out on oil rigs. We have friends that work out on lighthouses, on fishing vessels, on all kinds of stuff. But I think that's still a very different than the fact that anglerfish exist. That's the shit that I can't get behind. I can get behind the dangerous seas. I cannot get behind colossal squid existing in deep ocean. To be fair, they only live off Antarctica, I think, but still, I can't get behind that aspect of the ocean being terrifying.
I just don't want to think about it like I do with all my problems. But too bad, we're talking about it.
I mean, we can be done talking about it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Shit. Hey,
okay, we're gonna go ignore our problems now. Bye.
In 2 days, we will be at the Dark History and Horror Convention.
Are you shitting me?
No, just kidding. In next weekend. Next weekend, we'll be at the Dark History and Horror Convention in Champaign, Illinois at the Orpheum Theater. August 31st, September 1st.
We'll be wearing costumes and hanging out in the tent inside like crazy people.
Buy some buttons and support the pod. Learn about what we do.
Yep. The end.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Well, that concludes this week's broadcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you wish to stay in touch, reach out to us at broadcastfromthebelfry@gmail.com or stalk us on Instagram at broadcastfromthebelfry. Again, I hope you've enjoyed our little show. Please rate and review. And until next week, stay spooky.